Hello, everybody. This is Andrew Olson, the founder of Pan Africa Football, continuing our discussions and previews to get you ready for the African Nations Championship, the CHAN, being hosted in East Africa by Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. And with us, as we've always had for these discussions, is Gambian coach Matar Mboj. He's coached the Gambia under-20 national team, and currently he is in Denmark, where he's a transition coach for AC Horsens. Matar, always a pleasure to have you. Thank you for joining us. How are you doing this evening?
Very fine, Andrew. Thanks so much, as always, for the invitation. Happy to be here and excited to talk about Group D.
We have a unique group in this, the only 4-team group, with the other 3 groups having 5 teams. So, Group D, we have Senegal, the defending champions, the Republic of Congo, Sudan, and Nigeria. This is a fascinating group. Honestly, all of these teams are going to be competitive in this group. What do you think when you first look at this group and how competitive it's going to be?
Well, for me, I look, as a coach, I'm always interested to see the coaches here. And this group shows the trend at this tournament that I think will make it the best ever. Because who would have thought Eric Shell would be the one to take over the Nigeria team, be on the bench in that CHAN tournament. Kwesi Appiah, there with the Sudan team, doing so well in World Cup qualifying. They've also qualified for the next AFCON. For sure, also Barthélemy in Gatsono, very well versed, experienced coach, taking over the Congolese team. And then Souleymane Diallo, who has been in the Senegal setup, who will be, I think, the most tested out of all of them. But the previous incumbent of the role, Pape Thiaw, won the tournament, and then he's now the A national team coach, and he's been busy going to England and beating England 3-1. So it just shows you the path that can happen for the coaches in the CHAN here. To me, that's what really stands out, the coaching pedigree that's going to be on the sidelines, and it's going to be very, very fascinating to watch that.
I'm very excited to discuss this Senegal team. This is a really interesting team because nobody really expected them to break through and win the 2022 edition of the CHAN, because they're always a team that focuses on developing young talent. But this team, the players in that team, it turned out to be a whole lot more ready for the spotlight than we might have expected. We knew they had talent, but to upstage Algeria, the hosts, in the final, an experienced Algerian team. Do you think that Senegal could become sort of a victim of expectations at this edition of the tournament?
I think so. Purely because at international level, it is difficult to retain titles. At club level, I think, at league level and clubs, particularly, we have seen teams win leagues 8, 9, 10 times in a row. But for sure, at international level, it is a lot more difficult. It has to do with cycles in terms of the talent, the level of talent of the group that you have. As a consequence of the last CHAN, a lot of those players are no longer available for selection. And I think that's what they wanted. That was one of the main objectives in terms of showcasing Senegalese talent. And the players who have been selected and who are now going to compete, in the test matches I've seen, in the friendly matches I've seen, they are a far way off from the team that won the championship. I think there's one player who survives from that squad, and I really think they're going to struggle. I think that also the coach has come in whilst he's been waiting patiently for this opportunity. I also feel that he may, of course he wants to take on the job, but maybe just bitten off a bit more than he can chew. I think potentially in the next edition, once these players get a bit more experience also at this stage, then they can compete. But right now, I think the difference in class and talent of the two squads the championship winning squad and this one, I just see a big gap there.
And sometimes we see that with a team that brings, young players is, maybe at some point they just develop such great chemistry and the players turn out to be ready for this spotlight, even at their young age, where they just kind of explode and achieve something like winning this tournament. Do you think, when you look at the squad, there's a lot of Senegalese supporters who say, oh, why didn't you call up the top scorer in the Senegalese league? The number 2 scorer as well. In the country's top flight wasn't called up. There's a few Ligue 2 players from the Senegalese second tier. What do you say kind of in response to that? Is the depth of players so deep in Senegal where, one coach could call up an entirely different team from another coach because he sees the players differently? How do you examine sort of the Senegalese squad and respond to people who kind of complain maybe this isn't the best team they could possibly put out?
Traditionally, I think Senegal has always been well structured defensively. They try to follow a French style of playing in terms of is trying to get the ball to the wings and creating chances that way. But for sure, I'm happy to see players from the second league in Senegal competing. I think it's a testament to the level of talent that's available in the country, for sure. And it's a signal of all the work that they've been doing. There was a time when I think they had nearly every championship that was available. AFCON, CHAN, 17s, 20s. So they've done a phenomenal job in terms of that winning culture. But the cycle has been where, because of they've been victims of their success because the talent pool has drained a little bit. So maybe I think for me, in terms of you look at League One, League Two, maybe there's not so much difference between them in terms of the levels. Such has been the growth and the acceleration. So you have the teams lower end who are catching up now to the teams in the top league. The question about the top scorer being omitted and the second top scorer is alarming, because historically you do need a guy who's going to come in, play regularly and score goals. But Senegal was almost the exception in the last competition. They had they didn't score a lot of goals, and the secret was the clean sheets and their defensive record. Now, maybe the coaches looked at that and then thought to himself that maybe these strikers are not disciplined enough, or they're not following the system, they don't fit into the system, and he's prioritized the defensive workload of others above the goal-scoring ability. That's just when I look at it, because if any of these CHAN coaches, if you're looking for a number 9, the first place you look is to say who was the tournament top scorer in the league, who was the league top scorer. And you look at the numbers, you watch the footage, you see the player in action. And the hardest thing to do in football is to score goals. Now, to hear a coach is leaving X amount of goals out of the squad is alarming to me, but he must have the reason. He must know in terms of, okay, how he wants to play and how he thinks the team can have success and has had success. Maybe these players don't fit into the system. It won't make sense to us at all, because just like we said, football is scoring goals is the hardest thing in football. So it's about scoring goals, and to turn away and say you don't want the top scorers in your country's league, then it also puts pressure on the guys who will eventually play. Because no matter what, if they're not getting goals, if they go 2 games, 3 games without goals, guess what the headlines are going to be? And the coach is going to be put under a lot of pressure in terms of if the team doesn't do well, one of the reasons is that they don't score so many goals. He's going to have to explain himself in the media, unfortunately.
I mean, this Senegal team that won the last edition just really caught fire. It turned out to be such a talented team. You have, of course, Lamine Camara, maybe the best player. He may turn out to be the best player to have ever played at this competition. He's risen so fast, playing at AS Monaco now. You have Ousmane Diouf, who is a powerful center back, who's now doing very well at Al Hilal in Sudan. Pop Diallo, we just saw, he just completed a big money move to Norwich City. Would you say with this team, like, we just have to keep the expectations down? When I look at this group, I would predict Senegal to maybe not make it out of this group. Do you think we should go that far and say something like that, or is that kind of maybe being a bit too dramatic about it?
I agree with you, and it's also looking at the strength of the other teams. I think traditionally Senegal, they have that winning culture, but it's waned a little bit, and there's been a bit of. I know the elections are coming up in Senegal. There's been a little bit of infighting, and I'm not sure if all the federation's concentration and time can be spent anymore on the national teams. And I definitely think that the Chan team is maybe feeling the effects of that, because I look at the games they played in the mini tournament that was organized by Sakafa and losing both games. No matter where in the world you play, Senegal should be beating Uganda. Senegal should be beating Tanzania. To come out and lose those games it was an alarm bell to me. Of course, maybe the coach was trying different things, and maybe experimenting a little bit more. But at this stage, with so close to the competition, he should be able to know which his best team was. I think they played Guinea twice, also 0-0, and then also won, I think, by 1 goal. So defensively, it was there, but now it's about, okay, how can they go to win games? And for sure, they can rely on the defensive effort. It worked for them last time out, but I don't think it's going to be similar here. Because even if you look at the likes of Congo, Nigeria, Sudan, these are teams that can hurt you. And if you're not ready to present attacking threats of your own, things that they need to worry about, then it's going to be a much harder contest for you, for sure.
I think there's a real element of unknown when it comes to the Senegal team, and I'd say it's kind of the case last time around. So who knows? The stage is there for these players to step up, and they'll certainly be willing to seize the opportunity. But we turn our attention next to Republic of Congo. Really interesting story. They were set to not compete at this tournament. Their federation was banned by FIFA. It's really disrupted the game there. It's disrupted Africa Cup of Nations qualifying, World Cup. It's completely ruined pretty much the World Cup qualifying campaign. But an appeal has brought the team back in. They defeated Equatorial Guinea in qualifying for this competition. And we've seen this Congolese team, sometimes they get overshadowed by the regional heavyweights, of course, right across the river. DR Congo, Cameroon, even Equatorial Guinea at times has overshadowed them. But this team has achieved some things at this competition. They have a proven domestic scene with clubs that compete in the CAF Confederation Cup. And also, of course, they have quite an illustrious history going back to the early days of CAF. Looking at this team, first look at this team, it's a combination of younger players and experience. When you take kind of a surface level look at this Congolese team, do you think they fancy themselves to make a deep run at this tournament? And what do you think about their chances of doing that?
Yeah, I think expectations will be low for them because they've gone through so much turmoil, as you already said. And the disruption, it's a very, very unwelcome world for coaches. We don't want to have our preparations disrupted. We want everything to go smoothly. And in this situation, it just seems like there were a lot of things that were out of the hands of the technicians. And I think even the appointment of the coach came quite late to take the team because of the uncertainty, just like you said about the ban. For sure, they will have that game plan in terms of making sure that they don't concede too much space and playing on the counter-attack. And I think that's one of the trends and some of the keys that we've seen when you have the likes of Sudan, Nigeria, and Senegal. I think Congo will come and say, right, well, we were nearly not even in this tournament. So let's go out there, nothing to lose, play with that freedom in terms of, look, anything that we get from here is a bonus because of the terrible preparations and the terrible approach and uncertainty, disruption, turmoil. We've said all those words. So now it's like, okay, here's some football matches to play. We've got 3 games. Let's do the best that we can. Let's make sure we're difficult to beat. Let's make sure we are in matches throughout the whole 90 minutes. We don't concede early. They've got a good goalkeeper by all accounts as well, proven. He's going to be difficult to score against. But for sure, I think these low expectations are going to play into their hands. And I think you're going to see the Congo team just play with that spirit of having gone through all the commotion off the field. I think the players will be the ones to say, we're really fortunate to be playing this game, to be here playing football. Let's give everything we can. And I think that's also going to be the message from the coach.
And how much stock should we take in this sort of pre-tournament phase where I don't think they've been able to play any friendly matches or official friendly matches? Everything's kind of been behind closed doors. There's not really, like you said, it's clearly affected, the whole circumstances has clearly affected their preparation and ability to prepare extensively for this tournament. How much stock should we take in that when we consider, how will they do at the tournament, or might this relax them and maybe have them play with some freedom, just being happy to be at this tournament after overcoming the FIFA ban?
Yeah, really great question, great point. Because in the wider context of African football, teams always struggle with the preparation. There's never enough money. There's never enough time. There's never enough in terms of organizing logistics, in terms of finding opponents to play in good surroundings. It's always a challenge. And we want to try to advocate that when you go for these big tournaments, there needs to be preparation. You need to have matches. When we played the 20s, we were fortunate to be in Morocco beforehand, and before we traveled to Mauritania, and had 2 quality friendlies against Burkina Faso and Cameroon. And that should be the way. I think if a team comes in without any preparation, shows up and does well, it's not a good message. It's not something that we want to encourage, because you look at the wider world, you look at teams in Europe, South America, North America, Asia, everywhere in the world, they wouldn't think of not having any matches to prepare a big tournament like this. It's just unthinkable in their aspect. It's like they have to move mountains to make sure that it happens. And if it doesn't happen, questions will be asked and people will no longer be in their jobs. Of course, the mitigating circumstances in Congo's case are there in terms of being inactive for so long because of the ban. But it's part of me is as an advocate of solid preparation, of making sure that you are professional as possible in work that you do. I personally, I don't want to see them to do too well, but at the same time, if they do the work on the training ground with the limited time that they have, if the coach can pull out the stops to produce a team that can upset the other teams in the group, fair play to them. But it's not something that should be encouraged in terms of preparation for a tournament.
All interesting points, Matar. It's really an unknown how this team's going to come out, but we know they are capable when you look at the talent in this team. I've seen. I know their right back, Prince Mwanza. He excelled at the Chan in Cameroon, the 2020 Chan, and I think the supporters are very happy to see this team there and believe in them. But yeah, it's definitely it's going to be interesting to see how they perform, because this is going to be a very difficult group. We look at the next team here. We look at Sudan. Sudan has really achieved some great things under Coach James Kwesi Appiah. He even upstaged his old employers at Ghana, his own nation, really proved them wrong. A country that's really endorsed European coaches and spending the money for that. And he just continues to achieve amazing things. They're firmly in the hunt to qualify for the FIFA World Cup in 2026. They've really brought the stars for this too. They're taking this very seriously. Players like Mohamed Abdel Rahman, he's a player we've covered extensively at Pan Africa Football, because sometimes Sudan kind of falls victim to not getting as much attention as they might deserve. being an Arabic speaking country that kind of gets overshadowed by the North African nations. Um, you know, Matar, looking at this team, I really seriously think this team should be considered a serious contender to win this tournament. What do you think when you first look at it and you see that they're bringing all these top players from Al Hilal, Al Merreikh? What's your first impressions of this team, and what should their supporters expect from them at this tournament?
Yeah, I think because these players have done so well also at the AFCON level, and with all due respect, they played against quality players, quality opponents, players who are plying their trade in Europe, and they've more than held their own on some occasions, like you said, have upstaged the likes of Ghana with all their star-studded lineups to take Sudan are taking their place in the next AFCON. For sure, the coach also deserves credit. He's done a phenomenal job, especially when you consider that it's a war-torn country, when you consider that those two teams we mentioned have been playing in the Mauritanian League to keep themselves active. When you consider that, like you said, he was not appreciated, I guess, in his home country. He took them to coach them at the World Cup. He's taken on the reins of the Sudan team, and he's just taking them to another level. It's just phenomenal. Another one of the best coaches in Africa, without a shadow of a doubt. And I concur and agree with what you say in terms of they need to be looked at as serious contenders because they've got the players and they've got the coach.
This team has just proven so much, and they're so experienced. Just such experience all throughout this team in the defense, from the defense up to the forwards. But at the same time, in the 2022 edition, this team failed to get out of the group stage. They finished behind Madagascar, the surprise team of that edition, and also a Ghana team that was, to be honest, quite patchwork, not exactly one of the stronger teams we've seen from Ghana. That was a real surprise to see them fall short in the group stage up in Algeria. Do you attribute this improvement of the team? Do you think it's going to be a completely different story with Kwesi Appiah in charge? Do you think, what's different between that team and this team?
Yeah, motivation and belief. I think prior to that, I think Sudan was always recovery, always having that mindset of being an underdog. But with Kwesi Appiah, and I always talk about culture in teams and settings, he's just completely changed it around. He's put that winning mentality into them. He's made the players believe that they can beat any team in Africa, and they have done. On their day, they can. They've had quality results, and they more than deserve their place on the continental stage. And I really think he's been the X factor. I think if it had been another coach, I don't think we would be seeing or talking about the team in the way that we are now. He deserves a lot of credit for this. Who knows where the team can end up. The sky's the limit with this team. Dark horses, for sure, to win it. I couldn't agree with you more. They will be challenged because they're in a group with Nigeria and Senegal. They're not going to be walkovers. They're not going to be easy games. Congo as well is not going to be easy, but for sure the Sudanese players, I think they will now have that belief and they'll be saying to themselves, we can beat Nigeria. We can beat Senegal. And I think maybe previously 2-3 years ago, if you said that or thought about that, you would just be considered insane if you're a Sudanese player. But now I think they're just going to carry that onto their shoulders. They're going to look the opponents in the eyes and they're going to go toe-to-toe with them in all the group matches for sure. And I think they'll be able to qualify for the next round as well.
I think I look at this group and I see them as the favorites to win the group. One factor I was looking at and I wanted to ask you about is, due to the circumstances in Sudan, they finished up their league. They kind of created a special mini league to determine their representatives at the CAF Champions League and CAF Confederation Cup next season. And this competition just finished up 9-10 days ago. I believe 10 days ago was when Al Hilal clinched that title. So as compared to some of the other teams who've been their players have been out of play for a month, kind of more on the European schedule. Do you think the fact is that the Sudanese players are going to be more in top shape and game shape? Do you think this is going to play a factor in potentially making a run to the final and potentially even winning this tournament?
Really great point. And there's two factors. I like what you say about the fitness, match fitness. So the coaches will have to work less in terms of getting up to speed in that aspect. So I think Kwesi Appiah and his coaching staff will have more work to do on the training ground in terms of tactics. They'll be able to rest the players a little bit more because they'll say that, look, these guys are in good shape already, so we don't have to force or do too much work on the training ground. The second part is that, well, not to do too much running on the training ground. The second part is that it's a 4-team group, so they've got 3 games to navigate, as opposed to all the other groups where they're having to play 4 games, which is another mental drain. Physically, also they'll be drained. So I think all the teams that will, both teams that will qualify from this group, will be fresher in terms of when it gets to the quarterfinal stage, I believe. Maybe in terms of scheduling, maybe they may have one extra, a day less rest, but for sure, I think navigating the physical aspect is a really important point that you make. The fact that these guys are just straight from competition, and it was a very competitive mini league, and now it's just about dusting themselves down, forgetting about their club duties, and just coming now to represent the national team as the best that they can, especially with all of the countries going through. The football team has been that big hope, has been that source of inspiration, and Africa and the world is seeing Sudan compete and have relevance because of the football team. And the fact that the country is going through so much difficulties in terms of the war, this is almost a welcome relief for all people of Sudan.
They're ready to go for this competition. They're going to be fit and really ready to take on the competition. Closing out with looking at the teams in the group, I wanted to look at Nigeria. Nigeria is always an intriguing team to look at in any competition they take part in because of their legacy as one of Africa's top teams, what they've achieved in the past. And when it comes to the CHAN, they kind of have to deal with these heavy traditional expectations while at the same time, maybe not having quite the firepower that people expect of a team from Nigeria. A few of these players in this team, they took part in the Unity Cup with the full national team in England, and where Nigeria did quite well, where they won the tournament, this sort of mini tournament. How much does that experience help these domestic-based players when they take part in training on a daily basis with all the glamorous European-based players who are playing in the English Premier League and Spain and Germany? How valuable is that experience for some of these domestic-based players?
Very invaluable, and credit to the coaching team and credit to the organizers of the competition and the federation for taking part in the competition. And the way they organize the squad in terms of, as you said, putting some of the best players in Africa, in the world, competing at the highest level with domestic players, Nigerian players, is so huge for those players' development. And looking at this tournament now, that experience has helped them. That experience has now answered a few questions in the minds of Eric Schell, the coach. It's also alleviated, I think, some of the pressure and maybe nervousness and anxiety from the players to say that, look, I share the locker room, the training pitch with these top players. I want to get back there. And the way and the route to get back is to make sure that we do as well as we can in this tournament, in these matches that we have in the group stages, and go as far as we can. Because then my national team head coach is going to have no hesitation in bringing me on board. For sure, their priority will be to move out of Nigeria. That's just the realities in terms of traditionally what's happened. And Nigeria is such a talent pool where there's been thousands of players who've gone through that pipeline and are playing in some of the biggest teams in the world, as we know. They will think that that's my way to get into the national team, that I need to leave Nigeria. But at the same time, when Eric Schell is standing there and he's giving you tactical instructions, it's like, okay, the road is a little bit shorter. it's still hard because it's the Nigeria Super Eagles. It's a brand. It's the prestige is unmatched everywhere. In terms of also the level of competition, in terms of the talent pool they can draw on, it's going to be very difficult, as it always is, as a home-based player, to break into that team. But the pathway is a little bit shorter, and I'm sure you're going to see the hunger and the desire from these players because they want to impress the national team coach, they want to impress the scouts, they want to move out of the Nigerian league and eventually find themselves playing for the main Super Eagles squad.
And they call them like the Super Eagles B. It's almost kind of demeaning. It seems like these players, they sort of don't get taken as seriously when it's almost like they're not even the Super Eagles, like the Nigeria team. Do you think that's going to motivate these players to really, really put on a good performance and boost, their careers, but also to kind of say, hey, I deserve to wear the shirt. I deserve to represent Nigeria in an international competition. How much does that motivate them in a tournament like this?
What worries me about Nigeria, I've also worked with them before. I've worked with the 23s before when they won the 2015 23s Cup of Nations with Samson Siasia. And you cannot underestimate the level of noise that surrounds these players. They're not just being spoken to by one agent. It's maybe 3, 4, 5, maybe 10 agents are speaking to them. Family members, relatives, friends, teammates from other teams. There's so much distraction with any Nigeria Super Eagles team, whether it's Super Eagles main team, B team, 23s, 20s, 17s. It's just relentless. It just doesn't stop. It's this incessant busyness around the team that there's always people hanging around the team, agents in hotels, people coming out of nowhere. And invariably what happens is those players take all the noise in their heads and they go out onto the field without that full concentration. And Nigeria is the team where, looking at their game also against Zanzibar, where they weren't able to win, it was a 0-0. But that's where you see players being a little bit more selfish, wanting to take the stage, wanting to be the star and be the recognized name. Because for sure, Nigeria has the proven talent way. Regardless of whether the team qualifies for the next round, wins the CHAN, there will be players going from Nigeria to Europe to leagues in the world from now until the end of time. That's just guaranteed. So if the objectives are in terms of doing well and putting the Nigerian league in the spotlight, because like you said, it's always been demeaned, it's always been thought of as being less than the main guys, of course, because there's this huge gap. They all need to get onto the same page. And I worry about the fact that will they be able to play as a team? I think they want to impress the coach. But I spoke about before that they'll think to themselves, the best way for me to play for the Super Eagles, to play against Victor Osimhen, Ademola Lookman, is to be playing in Serie A, in the Premier League, in the Bundesliga. So that, I think, will be the overriding motivation for those players. And unfortunately, that doesn't stick so well in terms of what you're trying to do as a coach, in terms of doing the best for the team. It doesn't.
And you've spoken very highly of Eric Schell. It's such a heavy burden to be the head coach of Nigeria. It doesn't matter if you're a foreign coach, if you're a Nigerian coach, especially if you're a domestic coach. But this is kind of interesting because Schell, he played for Mali. He's kind of, he kind of straddles that line, right? Because I think he's French born. But he also played for Mali. And when he was hired, a lot of derision, a lot of negative comments on social media, even from, past famous players, Nigerian players as well. It's never easy, but it seems like he's kind of let all this criticism kind of bounce off him. Tell us why. I mean, this is such a bold move for him to coach at this CHAN, I feel. it kind of just shows his commitment, but it's also, do we question his sanity a bit because it's such a challenge and it's such a bold move. Tell us why you like Eric Schell as a coach, and just how, what do you think of his decision to take on this responsibility to coach at the Chan?
Really great question. And I think in terms of giving himself the best possible chance to have the job, especially knowing that it's a very highly coveted job around the world, coaches in Europe, coaches anywhere, they want to be coaching the Super Eagles. So I think when negotiations came in, I think it was almost, okay, I also want to take the Chan team. I also want to coach the local based players because I want to bring that through. I don't just want to watch the league. I want to be responsible for those players and have that development of growth in Nigerian football. And that would have been music to the ears of the guys on the Federation Technical Committee, I would imagine. And I think that is also something that I think enabled them to secure the job. Now, the way that the results have gone for the Super Eagles in terms of World Cup qualification has been difficult, and they may not qualify. Added to that already is the fact that he is from Mali, French-born, as you said, French background. So the Nigerian fans, media have said, well, if you can't get a highly qualified European coach, then why didn't you go for a Nigerian coach? Why did you have to go for somebody from Mali? So that's brought on unwanted scrutiny again. And then I think everything is just combined where now he's going to be under pressure in this tournament. I really worry for him because I know he's a quality coach, but I also know that the body of work that he produced, I won't say he was fortunate to get the Super Eagles job. I could see why he got it. And I was very happy that he got the appointment for sure because he's an African coach. But you have to start backing yourself. They played in the mini tournament, the Unity Cup. They got that trophy on board. But trust me, it's not enough. It's not nearly enough. That's even probably 1 hour after lifting that trophy, it was forgotten about and probably never spoken about again. Nigeria expects to win AFCON, expects to go to World Cup, expects to even one day win the World Cup. Never mind winning Chan. That should be the least of what the country should be able to do. So we have all this in terms of that powerhouse, and I have the concerns, I have the worries, but one of the things that I admire about the coach is that he's very bullish and he's very brave and he sticks to his guns and he'll approach this challenge head on. But I just don't know whether he'll be able to overcome this challenge yet.
Yeah, and that's the number one thing I think we should take out of it is that he should be applauded for taking on this challenge, for wanting to become familiar with the domestic-based players, which is something that supporters in African nations, they want coaches to be invested in the domestic game. They don't want some European coach who just flies in, handles the World Cup qualifiers, and then, goes back home and doesn't pay any attention. That's kind of the stereotype of the European coach or the foreign coach, so to say. I think he should be commended for taking on this responsibility. But yeah, I just have to say, he could have easily left this to a domestic coach. He's got this World Cup qualifying campaign, which has gone horribly wrong for Nigeria. There's so much uncertainty there, with South Africa. They might have points deducted. Nigeria pretty much has to win out. They're going to have to go to South Africa and win in a few months. And yep. Do you think that if Nigeria gets bounced in the group stage of this tournament, do you think, I guess in the end, he already knows the pressure's really high. He's going to have to win that match in South Africa, but do you think it could get so severe if they get bounced that he might get replaced before that South Africa match?
Yes, anything is possible. It just depends on the level of performances. It depends on whether the public and the federation can see the improvement in the team. They want to see a team that's well coached because I think traditionally Nigerian teams have not been so structured, not been so disciplined. So they want to be able to see Eric Schell's qualities as a coach reflected in the team. For sure, if the results don't come and the performances are not up to standard, yes, he could lose his job before the World Cup qualifiers, for sure. Because the clamour and the call will be so big from the media, from the fans, from all sides, that by the time those games comes around, to have them play them in such a negative atmosphere is counterproductive. So in order to ease the noise and give everybody the best possible chance, then you remove the source of that noise and that negative press. If that happens to be the head coach as a result of the chant, then he's going to go. I think the Federation will be a little bit more thinking long term, because the World Cup qualifiers, maybe they can get into the playoffs, get second place, and get to the playoffs is also feasible. And then they've also got the next AFCON as well. So they don't want to have so much, we talked about it before, disruption. They don't want to be chopping and changing coaches so much. But there is no doubt that if the team doesn't perform up to expectations, then because it's Nigeria, Eric Schell's job will be on the line.
Things change so quickly. The winds of change come very quickly in Nigerian football, and if they don't do well, everybody's going to be scrutinizing his decisions, his tactics, and that includes former Nigerian national team players who we've heard in the media who've made comments. They're actively plotting, to take over that job. But I think I heard Garba Lawal. We did an article about Garba Lawal who said, "Yeah, I'm ready to coach the Super Eagles one day." It's not even subtle, So the vultures will be circling if Nigeria gets back to the group stage.
Of course.
So before
just to add into the mix that we talked about in terms of all the circus that will be going on around the team, you also have people within that who will be close to the team, who will want to undermine, who will want the team to get knocked out, who want the coach out of the job because maybe they have somebody lined up or they prefer to see a Nigerian in place. It happens. It's something that I'm sure, is aware of. He has to surround himself, and he has surrounded himself with his trusted coaches. But he will also know that, listen, I need to make sure that I take care of the team, minimal distractions, and we all stick together, because there's people who may even infiltrate the camp and the hotel that we're staying in and the training ground and try to mix things. And the old adage of a country's population, everybody's a coach. With a huge country like Nigeria, 250 million coaches, they're all going to be wanting that job. So Eric Schell has a lot to deal with. Yeah.
Before we get to trying to predict who's going to get out of this group, you mentioned, as a coach, this is something a lot about that you wanted to discuss, is that this is a 4-team group compared to the other 3 groups, which have 5 teams. How does this kind of change the formula for coaches with that extra game, or kind of just that extra thing that you have to consider? And how much of a difference does it make in terms of fatigue for the players, being in a 4-team group versus being in a 5-team group when you're looking at trying to advance deep into this tournament?
Yeah, really great point. And I really think that the organizers need to look at this next time, because it's clearly a lot of advantages in terms of teams in the 4-team group. The intensity, the physicality, the demands of playing such high-level football is going to take the toll physically as well as mentally on these players. Of course, I think the way they've scheduled the games is the teams in the 5-man group, they're going to have enough rest time, I think. But still, it's a long time to be together. Having your 3 games and then having an extra one also is just as I said, mentally, it's a lot of pressure. They've also got to deal now, I think, with a yellow card count. Maybe they may have a player who, after 4 games or 3 games, has a 1 yellow card. Normally, they'll be able to play in the quarterfinal game, but because of this extra game, the 4th one, maybe they get their 2nd yellow card in the 4th match, and then they're suspended for the quarterfinal. Now, I don't think that's a fair advantage. I'd have to scrutinize the rules and hope that CAF has considered that and taken that into consideration. But all these factors, I think, puts advantage to the two teams that qualify from this group, I think they will have an edge. I think they'll just be a little bit sharper. I think they'll just be a little bit fresher mentally, so that when they come up against any of the other knockout teams from all the other groups who've gone through what will seem like battle after battle after battle, I think they're going to be in a better place to win those quarterfinal matches. That's the early prediction that I have, and it'll be interesting to see how everything plays out.
Certainly. And, a couple of issues we've raised that CAF really needs to look at, because we love this tournament. We love discovering new players and just kind of seeing these African nations, seeing their domestic scenes get the full exposure they deserve that sometimes we don't see at the full national team with all the dual national players. But there's a couple issues with it, between what we're seeing with South Africa, which we mentioned in our Group C preview. Certainly some things that CAF needs to analyze and fix moving forward. I'm happy we were able to talk about that and acknowledge that's probably going to be a serious factor, perhaps, in who wins the tournament.
I agree.
But, now we got to get to the prediction time. And this is going to be a very competitive group from what I've seen. Who do you have advancing? Pick two teams. Who do you have advancing to the quarterfinals out of this group?
Yeah, I fancy Sudan. Again, I said before, they've got a outstanding group of players. I like the word that you used, battle ready. And also they have a quality coach, one of the best in Africa. Likewise, Nigeria, with all the furore and the scrutiny that will be following the team, I think they will do enough to get out of the group, because I fear for Senegal. I worry that they'll be able to score enough goals to qualify. And I think that if they play Nigeria, for example, I think the Nigerians are the favourites. I would even say if they played Sudan, I think Sudan are the favourites against Senegal. And I guess the game against Congo was a little bit more even. Maybe Senegal are the favourites in that game. But though they're the two teams in terms of Sudan and Nigeria, I also think that if you look at the coaching class and acumen of those two in comparison to Souleymane Diallo, I think Souleymane Diallo's time will come. I think he will potentially be a phenomenal coach, but he has a lot less experience than the others that he's coming against. Even the Congo coach is far more experienced than him. And I think that may end up being one of the deciding factors, the major deciding factor for who comes out of the group. So Sudan and Nigeria for me. I'm not sure the order. It's those two.
Yeah, no, well put. Yeah, you've talked me into it. I wanted to back Senegal for this, and I think they do have an element of unpredictability similar to 2022. But yeah, when you bring up the coaches, it's a very good point. Being able to manage a team in a tournament like this is something that a lot of fans don't quite understand and see, and I count myself amongst that. It's fatigue, managing your squad, things like that. They're huge factors in the end. They seem small, but they end up becoming big factors. So yeah, I really like the Sudan team. I've made that clear in this discussion. That's for sure. I see them winning the group. But I think Nigeria has a lot of talent in this team. Sometimes I don't always say that about Nigeria. When it comes to their Chan domestic-based team, they've bowed out in qualifying a decent amount. But yeah, I concur. I'm going to go Sudan first. I'm going to say that definitively, and then I think Nigeria will be the runners-up. All right, Matar, always appreciate your insights, particularly on the coaching side. I think you made some excellent points about Eric Schell and Kwesi Appiah, and why they could be such big factors beyond the players on the pitch. Enjoyed this discussion of Group D. Have enjoyed previewing all the groups with you, and thank you everybody for watching and tuning in and listening to our analysis. We appreciate having you, and I'm sure we're going to certainly have some more discussions in the future, maybe during this tournament. We'll see if I can get Matar to agree and give me some more of his time. We'll see, but I really had a ball doing this, Matar, and I hope you enjoyed yourself as well doing this.
Likewise, Andrew, very enjoyable, and just send the invitation and I'll be there with pleasure. Thanks so much. Look forward to it.
I will spam your inbox, that's for sure. This has been Group D, and hope you enjoyed the discussion. And hopefully, we'll see you all again soon. Thank you for tuning in. And for Matar, thank you very much, and have a good one now.